Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, was the pope who cared for the weakest, repeatedly condemning what he himself called the globalization of indifference. He was the Pope of Mercy, proclaiming, from the 8th of December 2015 to the 20th of November 2016, the extraordinary year of mercy. He was the Pope of care for creation, denouncing, with the encyclical Laudato Si', environmental degradation and its economic and political causes. He was the Pope of the reform of the Church, initiating a profound reform of the Roman Curia and promoting, above all, financial transparency. To this end, he created the Council of Cardinals, to help him reform the government of the Church. He was the Pope who built bridges with the Muslim, Jewish and other Christian denominations. To this end, he created the Council of Cardinals, to help him reform the government of the Church. He was the Pope who built bridges with the Muslim, Jewish and Christian confessions. He met with imams, rabbis and Orthodox patriarchs, promoting universal brotherhood. He constantly defended migrants, asked for peace in world conflicts, Ukraine, Middle East, and promoted a dialogue that placed man at the center and not the economy. Chemical technician at a food analysis laboratory in Buenos Aires, specialized in quality control. Scientific training that favored his rational approach to science. To help his family financially, he also did humble jobs such as cleaning floors and doing small household chores, as he himself said. To support his studies, he also worked as a bouncer in a bar. He was not a bouncer in the violent sense, but rather, he managed the entrances discreetly, with his typical calm and decisive style. He told this episode to underline how even the humblest experiences teach important things, such as reading people, managing conflicts, and the ability to dialogue. A famous quote of his about it was, "I worked as a bouncer in a nightclub in Argentina. That also shapes you. You learn to defend yourself, to talk to people, to understand who is in front of you." After joining the Jesuits, he taught literature, philosophy and psychology in some Jesuit colleges in Argentina, was a librarian and archivist, provincial superior of the Argentine Jesuits and finally, rector of the Colegio Maximo of San Miguel. Was the Pope who broke, from the beginning, with many formalisms of the Vatican. He refused the papal apartment, choosing to live in the residence of Casa Santa Marta, sharing the spaces with other religious and lay people. He always defined himself as a priest among the people, and this is reflected throughout his pontificate. One of his most famous phrases was, "Reality is seen better from the periphery." His approach, simple but profound, struck many, even outside the church. He was often critical of social injustice, corruption and unbridled capitalism, always placing human dignity at the center. Francis strongly focused on dialogue with non-believers. Not everything was easy. Pope Francis has faced criticism from conservative circles, especially for his pastoral openness on issues such as communion for divorced and remarried people and his inclusive tone towards LGBTQ+ people, exemplified in the famous, "Who am I to judge a gay person who seeks God?" In addition, he has handled scandals related to abuse in the church with firmness, admitting past errors and creating new norms for prevention and transparency. His moment of solitary prayer in St. Peter's Square, in the rain in front of millions of people connected from home during the COVID-19 pandemic, has remained famous. Francis has been a pope close to the entire world. He has made over 40 international apostolic trips, also visiting poor or at-risk countries, such as the Central African Republic, Iraq, Myanmar, and South Sudan. His pontificate lasted 12 years. He appointed cardinals from countries never represented before, giving voice to a global, multicultural, outgoing church, as he himself liked to say. If you like this kind of video and want to know more about the lives of great personalities, subscribe to the channel to stay updated. Here you will always find stories that will move you and much more. Between 2015 and 2016, Pope Francis announced the Jubilee of Mercy, during which he pushed the Church to open up to forgiveness, acceptance and listening. Among the most famous anecdotes, which best express the personality of Pope Francis, we should mention the one in which, during an audience, a little girl climbed onto the stage and started playing with him. Francis let her do it, saying, "God also speaks through children," or like when he personally called people who had written to him, totally surprising them. Once he called a journalist just to say, "I liked your article, thank you." Another time, when he met a homeless man, he gave him his own cloak. His entire ecclesiastical career was marked by humility and closeness to ordinary people. Already from the time of his episcopate, he earned the reputation of Bishop of the Poor. In fact, he refused privileges, did not use a blue car but traveled by public transport, lived in a modest apartment, cooked alone and spent a lot of time in the villas miserias, the shanty towns of the city. He was a pastor close to the people, whom he embraced without filters, and who spoke a direct and understandable language. One of his most emblematic gestures in that period was the celebration of masses in the streets, among the homeless and the unemployed, without fear of getting his hands dirty with reality. Francis was the first Jesuit pope, the first South American pope, the first non-European pope in 1,200 years. The choice of the name, Francesco, was a reference to Saint Francis of Assisi, a symbol of poverty, peace and love for creation. In this regard, he said, "I would like a poor church for the poor." Here is a list of the jobs Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Pope Francis, did before becoming a priest, which show how he grew up in a simple and hard-working life. Chemical technician at a food analysis laboratory in Buenos Aires, specialized in quality control, scientific training that favored his rational approach to science, to help his family financially. He also did humble jobs such as cleaning floors and doing small household chores. As he himself said, to support his studies, he also worked as a bouncer in a bar. He was not a bouncer in the violent sense, but more than anything, he managed the entrances discreetly, with his typical calm and decisive style. He told this episode to emphasize how even from the most humble experiences you learn important things, such as reading people, managing conflicts, and the ability to dialogue. A famous quote of his was, "I worked as a bouncer in a nightclub in Argentina. That also shapes you. You learn to defend yourself, to talk to people, to understand who is in front of you." After joining the Jesuits, he taught literature, philosophy and psychology in some Jesuit colleges in Argentina, was a librarian and archivist, provincial superior of the Argentine Jesuits and finally, rector of the Colegio Maximo of San Miguel. In summary, Pope Francis did not grow up in a privileged environment, but he knew the world of work, the daily struggle and direct contact with simple people. This deeply influenced his leadership style as Pope, concrete, empathetic and close to the least. Now let's see some biographical notes. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the firstborn of 5 children, was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, on December 17, 1936 to a family of Italian origins. His father, Mario, was a Piedmontese railway worker who emigrated to South America and his mother, Regina Savori, was a housewife. From a young age he showed a deep spiritual sensitivity. But he was not at all a perfect boy or distant from reality. He loved football, tango and family time. At 17, after a confession, on September 21, the day of St. Matthew, he felt a strong vocation. He said that he felt a sensation of mercy so intense that it changed his life. In 1958, at just 21 years old, he entered the Society of Jesus. The same Jesuits known for their discipline and commitment to education and social justice. After graduating in philosophy and theology, he was ordained a priest in 1969. Later he also became a teacher and rector of the seminary, making himself known for his sobriety and closeness to ordinary people. In 1992 he was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires, then Archbishop in 1998, and finally, Cardinal by Pope John Paul II in 2001. After the historic resignation of Benedict XVI, in March 2013, a new conclave opened. On March 13, after 2 days of voting, Cardinal Bergoglio, with the name of Francis, in honor of the Saint of Assisi, symbol of humility, poverty and love for creation, was elected the 266th Pope of the Catholic Church. Upon his first appearance on the loggia of St. Peter, Francis immediately won hearts with a simple, "Brothers and sisters, good evening." And then, with an unprecedented request, he asked the crowd to pray for him before blessing them, overturning the traditional order and giving a very strong signal of humility and brotherhood. In recent years, one of his most visible physical problems has been his right knee, which has often forced him to move around in a wheelchair or with the help of a cane. The pain, caused by osteoarthritis, has sometimes forced him to give up some public engagements or to modify them. However, he continued to attend many important functions. His benevolent humor was also expressed in the occasion of his ailments, for which, once, he said, "You have to govern with your brain, not with your knee." Among his many other ailments, he underwent, already at a young age, the partial removal of a lung due to a serious respiratory infection, which, especially in the last year of his life, made him very vulnerable to respiratory infections, and, in July 2021, an operation with partial removal of the colon. On the morning of Easter Monday, April 21, 2025, at 7:35 a.m., he died of a stroke and cardiocirculatory collapse in his apartment in Casa Santa Marta in the Vatican. Pope Francis was a figure who knew how to speak to the hearts of millions of people, believers and non-believers alike. He brought mercy, humanity, ecology, poverty and the need for authentic relationships to the center of world attention, breaking the mold with strong words and gestures. He was a pope who embraced the pain of the world, denounced wars, corruption and poverty, and called for universal brotherhood, as in his encyclical, Fratelli Tutti. On Twitter as at Pontifex, he was one of the most followed religious leaders. He loved direct communication and spoke a simple language that everyone could understand. He did not like formalities and always chose truth and simplicity. With the washing of the feet of prisoners and Muslim women, for example, he broke the tradition of Holy Thursday, in which the feet were washed only of Catholic men. In this regard, he stated, "Jesus taught us to serve and not to judge." In 2019, kissing their feet during a peace meeting in the Vatican, he begged the political leaders of South Sudan to maintain peace. A gesture of profound humility that moved the world.